Hi, I'm Ms. Shoemaker, and today is day 69 of my doing 100 days of YouTube videos and focusing on my writing. So, yay, I managed to make myself do day 69. Um, Today I didn't want to do anything. And as I'm starting my video, I'm thinking I don't want to do this, and the back of my head is like, oh, yes, you do want to do this. And I do want to do this. I just want to skip the process and just come out the other side where I have a finished published book and um, everything is fabulous. Um, because in life, things are not always fabulous. There are good times, there's bad times, and even when you get to the end of a project, like finishing a book, there's another project, there's another something waiting. It's not the end. It's just like, okay, I accomplished this. Now I know I can accomplish something else. Just like I accomplished my 100 days of gratitude videos. So now I know I can do 100 days of writing. Although 100 days of writing is proving to be much more difficult for me than the 100 days of gratitude, especially since I have to actually do some kind of writing before I can make my video. And then, of course, I have to think about myself and my writing and all of those fun, fabulous things. So I put it off as long as possible. Um, I don't know what my deal was with today. If I'm perfectly honest, I slept all day, so that is why I'm up all night. um, so wishing I was in bed asleep right now, and probably the only reason I am not in bed asleep right now is because I was afraid if I went back to sleep like I wanted to, I would not do my video. So I did basically the same thing I did yesterday. I worked on Majalaya, or The Wise One, whatever you want to call that book at this point, I don't know. So I just kind of was reading through what I'd already written and made a few minor changes, trying to make something a little bit more obvious. It wasn't really confusing to me when I read it, but I know that that section, when I've read it to people in the past, has been a little bit confusing because I don't think I'm describing it very well. So I added a word, um, lifeless, which I think makes it make a little bit more sense as to what's going on. Um, anyway, I don't know entirely if that does or not, so it will have to wait until that whole book is written and I send it out to beta readers. And of course, there is that whole debate that's still going on in my head where I think the first 12 chapters are best written um, as backstory in later books in the series and not necessarily as something necessary for the books right now. But I put them there because both my mentor and my sister um, suggested that I write some kind of backstory explaining why the main character is so grown up at such a young age. Because children can be very grown up, they can be responsible at very young ages for siblings and other things based on their circumstances, based on what responsibilities their parents choose to give them, or based on whether or not they have parents that are actually willing to take on those responsibilities. Some children at very young ages ended up taking care of their parents and other siblings. So it is quite possible to be much younger and act much older. And some children do that just naturally. That's their personality. They get along with older children. They spend all their time around older children. So they act like they're older even though they're not. Um, some older children spend all their time around little kids, don't grow up, don't want to have responsibilities, haven't been given responsibilities, so they're very immature. So it's kind of a back and forth thing. So it's just kind of, this is where I assumed that my characters would be. And of course, as I went to write or to read what I was working on tonight, I kind of ended, was it chapter 5? Chapter 5. They're very short chapters tonight, the ones that I read, which I'm very grateful for. But I did put some of my made up words in there, and I was like, ooh, and they actually work. I don't have to take them out because I didn't reference them as old tongue. They just, use them as whatever and then said what their definitions were. So I'm like, that works. I can do that. So I left it in there. But anyway, I was kind of happy for that, but kind of sad for what's happening to my character in the book. And I was thinking about that. I'm like, why does it have to be sad? Why does it have to happen? But it has to happen because it's called the character development. It's what either stunts a character's growth or it's what makes them become more responsible. It makes them become who they are. It's their reason for responding to things the way that they respond to them. And so and sometimes, they respond poorly to difficult situations, and they don't develop their character, and sometimes they overdevelop things. They become too intense with certain character traits because of their particular circumstances. Like in this case, she grows up a little too fast, is afraid to have fun, feels overly responsible for everyone, for everything. And then the things that continue to happen to her continue to solidify that she is responsible for everything. And it takes time as an adult and years of learning to realize that she's not really responsible for everything. She couldn't have foreseen everything that was going to happen in her life. She didn't have that gift. She didn't have that power. And she can't go back and change what she did in the past to do whatever. So she does the best she can, as we all do in life. And I realize there's kind of a parallel, I think, when it comes to writing characters, when it comes to living life, and recognizing also for myself in my own life that, again, I like to skip the difficult parts of my life. I've never been able to actually skip the difficult parts. I've never been able to actually skip over the emotions. I hold on to them. I bury them. They keep coming up until I deal with them. But I attempt multiple times. I have, that's the definition of insanity, isn't it? Trying the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. I keep expecting that different result, which I know is never going to happen. But it kind of solidifies in me as I read through what I wrote and make some minor changes, mostly just the formatting and stuff like that with it, because all of my paragraphs are weird and spaced out, so I was putting them all together, which shrinks my chapters, which is not nice, but I didn't want to add anything to them. I did add a few things, like I said, added a word, and made some other changes, rearranged a couple things, but very, very minor, like mostly just tweaking little things. Don't know how much tweaking is going to have to happen with this book, when I finish writing it. But it's kind of what I was willing to work on tonight, so that's what I worked on. And I've completely lost my train of thought because I'm so tired, and or because I'm avoiding it, as it is the parallel to my life or to anyone's life, really, because we all have things that happen in our lives that allow us to develop our character, to become stronger, to have compassion for other people and their circumstances, to teach us life lessons, to give us responsibility, things that we require to follow through on, to develop who we are, to allow ourselves to change, to become different, to become better, or in some cases to become hardened, to become calloused, to be not caring about things. I know there's some things in my life that I feel very calloused towards, very turned off, shut off, and I feel bad because sometimes people tell me stuff like that, and I'm just like, yeah, and that goes in one ear and out the other. I'm like, I can't talk about that. I can't deal with that. I've lived a life of that. I'm burned out on that. I'm done with that. And I feel bad because my circumstances, you would think, would make me more compassionate for that. And I do have siblings that are very compassionate about that, very passionate about that. And they get very irritated with me because I am very calloused. So I had the opposite reaction that they had, even though the same events were occurring, same people, same person in our lives, going through the same situation, and yet our reactions are completely different, opposite ends of the spectrum, so to speak, because of how we chose to respond to the particular situation, because of where we fall in our family, because of the responsibility that I felt that was put on me, the relationship that I had versus the relationship that my siblings had. So we all had a different role to play, and we all dealt with it differently. And I think that's true in life. depending on our past experiences, our current experiences, our current relationships with people, when tragedy strikes or when change happens unexpectedly. Just things, life throws our way. It's like, hey, guess what? You just lost your job, or you just got a promotion, but you got to move to another state or another country, or some crazy wild opportunity to go somewhere with your friends for, a weekend or for a month or for summer vacation or Christmas break or whatever it is. And you're like, am I going to take it, or am I going to pass because, whatever the situation may be. Because family, because of money, because of fear, you turn all that down, or because of your circumstances, you're very adventurous, outgoing, like, oh yeah, I'm going to go for it. Whatever it is, I'm going to take a risk. I'm going to take a chance. I'm going to drop everything and run. Or if you fall somewhere in between. I wish I could say I fall somewhere in between, but I'm always on the extreme, and it's usually the overly cautious or the always the excuse, like, oh, that sounds great, I want to do it, I want to drop everything and run, and I'm not going to do anything because family, finances, fear, all of those things. So those are my excuses that stand in my way, and really it's just myself that's standing in my way of finishing, of accomplishing, of getting somewhere. And so it makes me feel kind of like, God knows what I need when I read through stuff that I've written, or go back and figure out the whole character development thing and what's going on with this character at a very young age, trying to comprehend, trying to explain, trying to figure out what no one else is telling her at a very young age. And then how that changes her development, how she has to grow up a little bit sooner, how she has to take on more responsibility, something she's clearly running from at the beginning of the book or laughing at, doesn't take seriously, doesn't comprehend at all. And not that she comprehends it any better at this point in the story, because she doesn't really, other than she's just feeling very confused and abandoned and not liking the explanation that she's getting. Denial is a very real thing when people are dealing with grief or dealing with change. It's like, I'm going to go into denial. This isn't actually happening to me. It is one of the stages of grief, but sometimes denial can last for years, months, years, days, weeks, whatever it is. It's very real. It's somehow our mind puts just like a blanket over it, just kind of blocks it all out. Like we put on a pair of sunglasses and we can't see. It's like, and it just completely blocked that out. Or, the blackout curtains or whatever it is. It's like, yeah, there's a little bit of light coming in right there. That might be something, but I'm just going to ignore that. That's not real. It's just kind of coming out of the side. It's not real. So it's kind of interesting to write characters and see them go into states of denial, to confusion, all of those things, and then have to write how they have life experiences that force them or allow them to grow out of that state of denial, to see things from a different perspective. And it's kind of interesting writing characters that are sort of based on myself, because it's also a way for me to go back and face those feelings and go back and see the denial in my life and be able to remove some of those things, to maybe loosen some of those calluses that I have, or I don't know if it's going to solidify those calluses. That's kind of not a nice idea, but it might, just because I can see what it does to my character. I can see what it did to me and recognize that that's what it did to me, or that's why it did that to me, and that I have the choice to continue to be like that or to change. So all of my writing opens up old memories, old wounds, old emotions, more things for me to face that I didn't face before, because my books, my characters are kind of parallel to my life in some sense or another. And I don't want to go into a whole lot of detail. I don't know that I went into a whole lot of detail about these things and recognizing God's hand in my life. I don't know that I will go into that kind of detail. And the books, the fantasy ones Majalea, the wise one. That's not, those events didn't happen in my life. What happens to her is worse than what happened to me. It's just, it's just a way to express the emotion, the feeling, the trauma, because I did have trauma that happened to me at those stages or ages in my life. So I'm creating trauma that's happening to this character and kind of what happens to her. So it, like I said, it's a parallel kind of to my life, but it's not my life. It's not my life story. But and even if it wasn't necessarily a parallel to my life, it's still a story that has to be written. It's still a story that shows that character development, that shows the traumatic events happening and the character's response to them. And that's, it's life. It's part of life. We all have to go through that to develop, to become who we are. And in a way, I think it makes me look back and be grateful for the experiences. Not 100%, mind you, I'm working on that. But to recognize at least that those experiences have made me who I am, have made me jaded towards some things, have made me open towards other things, have given me compassion towards some things, have created fear about other things, or have led me to live in a state of denial because I don't know how to process those things. I don't know what to do with that information, because it's very difficult to be a child and have traumatic experiences happen and not have adult figures that knew how to handle those experiences. I get the feeling that my biological mom didn't know how to handle trauma in her own life, so she had no way of teaching me how to handle trauma in my life. So it left me feeling very abandoned and confused, and basically being told that I shouldn't feel that way, or that not getting explanations to how to deal with it, basically. So I learned to bury it, to not feel it, to not respond to it. So it just kind of gets carried around with me, and that part of me gets frozen or got frozen. And this process is helping me to unfreeze those parts of me, to go back and to remove some of the confusion, to have the adult perspective tell the little girl in me what actually happened and how to deal with it. The only problem is the adult in me is still trying to learn how to deal with emotions and trauma and all of those things. And I have that little girl response of like, let's just deny it. Let's just pretend it didn't happen. We'll paste a smile on our face and everything's hunky-dory, except that it feels horrible inside, but we're just not going to tell anybody and it'll be okay. And I wish that would work. I'd love to say that's worked my whole life, but that's probably why I suffer from depression. That is probably why I struggle to let myself cry, or to probably why I don't have or have not had healthy romantic relationships, why I am single and don't know how to have healthy relationships. And I'm learning. I'm doing better, I think, I hope. Not in the romance department, that I'm completely clueless. But I'm doing better as being a better friend, and I would like to hope that at some point I could be a better sister, and a better person. But I have to be willing to expose myself. I have to be willing to alleviate those confusing times in my life, to unfreeze those parts of me so that I can move forward, so that I'm not hurting anymore. I went and saw a movie for Christmas Day. I may have mentioned that on here, but there was something in the movie just popped into my head as I was doing this, and I don't quote movies very well, so I'm going to butcher those quotes. But basically, it was a saying. The main character, or the man, was telling the little girl that you have to just move forward. You have to put all of that stuff behind you like it never happened, and just move forward, keep going forward. And the little girl says, no, you have to go back and understand before you can move forward, or something like that. So I think all of my writing that I'm doing, whether it gets published or not, hopefully it gets published. That's the goal. Otherwise, I wouldn't be torturing myself to write all this stuff. And it's not really torture, although some days it feels like it, because again, I don't like the emotions because I haven't learned how to process them. I haven't learned how to understand them. I haven't learned what to do with them. But it is that realization that as I go back, as I remember these events in my life, as I allow myself to feel them, to process them, to understand them from an adult perspective, to go back and see what actually happened. And not that I remember it perfectly, but I understand death a lot better as an adult than I did as a kid. I understand trauma a lot better as an adult than I did as a kid. I understand as an adult the struggle it is to be divorced, to be a single parent, to all of those things that I did not understand when I was the kid in that scenario. So it's given me a different perspective to go back into, to change my perspective, to see how I was blessed and how I wasn't necessarily being neglected on purpose or mistreated or unloved. That's how I felt. That was my interpretation. And it was a misinterpretation because it was a miscommunication, because we didn't talk. We didn't discuss. It was all buried. We were very good at just, we don't talk about it. Oh, it's okay because the bad guy's gone. Everything's okay now. But the trauma didn't get resolved just because the bad guy left. The insecurities didn't leave just because he left. It didn't fix everything. What it did is it stopped the trauma. It stopped the continuing abuse. So it put an end to that, but it didn't do anything to heal what had happened. And there wasn't a lot available at the time to allow that healing. My biological mom tried. She made attempts, and but she needed as much help and healing as I did, as my siblings did, and she wasn't able to acquire that. And I feel very blessed in my life that I have much more support, much more help. I have 12-step programs, I have counselings, I have bishops that's very supportive of me, and friends that are very supportive of me, and family that's very supportive of me. And the times are very different now than they were when I was a teenager, when all of that was happening growing up. Where I live is very different, where how people respond to things of this nature is very different than what I grew up with. So when I grew up with, people weren't open, they weren't supportive, they weren't helpful. They all thought my biological mom was crazy. And they, wanted to fix her. They wanted to try to tell her to go back and to, not make the choices that she made. So it was an uphill battle for her, and she didn't have support. And I look at myself and what a mess that I am, and I have a ton of support. And I don't know how she did it. So it gives me a greater appreciation looking back. But I did have to go through that jaded period of time and realize that my needs were not met. And as an adult, I can look back and have compassion on her because she wasn't in a position to meet those needs. She was stressed out, she was overwhelmed, she was hurting, she was traumatized, and she didn't know how to deal with her own stuff. And I have learned that if you can't handle your own stuff, you can't truly take care of other people. You can't help other people until you take care of yourself. Because once you take care of yourself, you're in a healthier place, you understand, and you've worked through it, then you can help others work through it as well. But you can't look at someone else and say, oh, this is your problem, here, let me fix it for you, when you haven't fixed it in yourself. And you don't even know if what you're telling other people to do will actually work for them. You're just assuming, making assumptions. And oftentimes for me, it's easier to fix someone else or focus on someone else so that I don't have to focus on me and I don't have to deal with me. And getting myself to do my writing for these 100 days is forcing me to focus on me. And when I don't want to focus on me, I don't want to do my writing. And then I don't want to do my videos. And then that voice in the back of my head says, oh, but yes, you do, you do, you do. Because I do want to get healthy. I do want to be happy. I do want to alleviate these emotional burdens. I want to learn how to let myself cry and to be okay with that. I want to understand how to process things, to let things go instead of carrying around this weight from forever that's not necessary. That's just holding me back. I want to be free, but I don't want to go through the process. And that little voice in the back of my head says, yes, I do. And I was like, no, I don't. I'm like, I don't. I will. And I know that God will help me through this process. And He has helped me up to this point. But I am stubborn and I do fight it. I do try to avoid it. I do have a very thick blanket of denial. I love curling up under that thing. It's beautiful. Except that, when I pop my head out and realize that that doesn't pay my bills and it doesn't write my books and it doesn't actually make me feel better, it makes me want to, burn it or something so that I won't ever use it again. And then that scares the crap out of me and I just bury myself under my blanket of denial again. So it's a vicious cycle I'm in the process of trying to break. And the different things that I choose to focus on or choose to read or work on as far as my writing goes are chipping away at those old frozen parts of me that are allowing me to go back, to do some healing, to do some feeling, to deal with some uncomfortable things and situations. But I'm grateful that I have the opportunity to go back and deal with those things and to know that as I work through them, as I let them go, that it may not eliminate the memories of what happened to me, but the pain associated with it can be taken up, can be swallowed up in the atonement. The Savior can heal that part of me, and it no longer becomes a hindrance. It no longer becomes something that keeps me frozen, prevents me from moving forward, from enjoying my life. It allows me to heal from those traumatic experiences. And writing my stories is part of that healing process, I think. So maybe that's part of the reason why I'm doing my 100 days of writing. May turn into 100 days of healing. I don't know. But it's all part of the process, and this is the part that works for me. And maybe writing doesn't work for you. Maybe exercising or cleaning. I know people that clean and it helps them to feel better. It helps them to get stuff out of their system. Counseling can help. 12-step can help. Lots of different avenues can help. But different things work for different people. But writing works for me. So I'm grateful for the gift of writing. I'm grateful that it does work to help me to heal and to face things that I don't necessarily want to face. So that's kind of where I'm at today. And I am grateful that there is a way up, there is a way out, there is hope through the Savior. And I'm grateful that I can still be grateful even when I'm struggling to come out from under my blanket of denial and to face my life and my reality, and or my past and emotions that I still don't know quite what I'm doing with, but I'm trying. So progress, not perfection, for those things I love from my 12-step program. And that's about all I have. So if you like, you can hit like, subscribe, you can share with someone else if you think it'll help them too. And I hope you have a great day full of gratitude and maybe do some writing.